presión de los managers, abuso verbal, el alto costo de la renta. Tenemos ya 2 años que nos están cobrando el 35%, pero por 19 años ya atrás nos han cobrado $50 cada año, cada mes, por 12 meses al año. Entonces, pedimos por favor que esto ya se frise, ya es demasiado abuso para nuestro bolsillo. Acabo de hacer un viaje como a Nueva York, a Albany, a la capital de Nueva York, y nos presentamos más de 2,000 personas con el mismo problema, y se asustaron de que yo iba representando a California, y me dicen, ¿hasta acá viniste? Sí, le digo yo al asambleísta, tenemos muchos problemas, nos están ahorcando con la renta, nuestro bolsillo ya no puede más. Entonces, tengo por favor que nos ayuden. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, César. Medina, quick bomb.
Dear members of the council, I know you very well in Santa Ana. I have 155 family members, friends that are happening through the same thing. There's a lot of oppression, a lot of abuse. For 19 years I've been living there, and they have been increasing $50 per year every single year. And I am asking that this could be freezed, this increment, and it's an abuse for our money, our pockets. I made a trip to New York, and there was 2,000 people that went to New York with the same problem. Some were afraid that I was representing Santa Ana, and I've been asking that we cannot afford no more, and we're asking for your help.
Buenas noches, señores miembros del City Council. Mi nombre es César Medina, vengo representando y apoyando a la compañera Rosa Pisano del Country Club. Y estamos aquí como los dedos de esta mano que ustedes ven, pero unidos como un puño, para defendernos del abuso de los ricos propietarios de los parques. Hemos estudiado el caso y no hemos encontrado una razón técnica, económica y social para que en unos casos incremente el 10% y el otro el 35% en una sociedad de mercado. Eso es inconcebible y están llevando a la gente a la desesperación. ¿Qué quieren? ¿Un suicidio? Cuando pierdan su casa y no tengan dónde ir. Se está golpeando a la gente con salarios fijos, únicos, y en la clase trabajadora que vive con el sueldo único. Están escuchando, hay gente desesperada, hay gente angustiada, que no sabe cómo reaccionar, y vienen aquí. Por lo tanto, señores, pedimos que se pongan la mano en el corazón. Vean nuestro problema que en esta década se ha incrementado como nunca antes. Sabemos que esta lucha es larga, sabemos que esta lucha es dura, no importa, pero finalmente venceremos. Gracias.
Good night, members of the council. My name is Cesar Reina. I am representing Country Club, and we are here like fingers, but also together as a fist. And we've been studying this case, and there's no reason or technical, social for the increases, 10% increase. It's inconceivable. And what do you want? Like people that are getting these increases, they will be committing a suicide. And we have money that is fixed, and it's only one income. And we ask you that you listen to us. There's people here that are desperate and they coming here for you. Please put your hands on your heart. We know that the fight is going to be long, but at the end, we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cuevon, followed by Kayla Levitt.
Good evening, council members. My name is Cuevon. I live at Valley High. I'm probably the junior most youngest person in that senior park. What I want to address you today is about the emergency rescue of Valley High with other senior mobile homes parks in Santa Ana from predatory rent gouging. Okay, if you refer to your package, I put two charts together that describe a very unique and telling perspective. Valley High is a prime example of successful rent stabilization. Over 35 years of no more than 3% raise per year. And ever since J&H Corporation took over the management of the park, everything goes downhill and all of the rent goes upward. And we are asking is, why is it that J&H out of Linda, California can justify this kind of rent increase when the owner belongs to a three-generation with a sterling record of supporting and harboring vulnerable seniors, low income, who wants to live out the rest of their lives. The only thing that we can think that causes it is that they're trying to convert a park from a senior park into a family park so that the economics will allow them to continue to go higher. Do you have a copy of that chart in front of you? Did you see that across over the years, you have over 20 years of just flatness at 3%. And then you have 5, 6, 7, 8%, and sometimes we have up to 35%. People cannot afford to live earning $900 and having to pay $800 out of parking space rent. What do they do with their food? What do they do with their medicine? What do they do with their insurance? What do they do with their mortgage? So you have to step in and stop obsessing about this rent control. Rent control, this is not about rent control. And all these people over here are giving you propaganda about rent control. This is about rent patrol. Rent patrol of excessive predatory gouging. This is rent patrol of okay? So what you need to do today is consider how you, as elected officials, can put a stop to rent gouging and help a lot of these poor people from eventually going homeless. You can't say, oh, nobody's going to go homeless. Oh, nobody's going to lose their home. These people know exactly how much they can afford to pay, and they know they can't make the next month rent.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Your time is up. Last speaker of this evening.
Hello, council members. Thank you for your time tonight. So I would like to speak on behalf of specifically the residents of Valley High because of the rent increase that's said to go into effect on June 1st. So with long-term leases, the problem with that is that it locks residents into permanent rent increases, which residents have already stated that they would have the inability to afford. So I would really like to direct the council towards the alternatives mentioned in the report, which would be considering an emergency moratorium on rent increases, as well as the locking them into something that just adjusts for inflation. It's really great to see all the residents organize on behalf of their safety, and I just think it's great that everyone came out tonight and told their story, because clearly that took a lot of initiative on their part, and I think that we should listen to them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julie Colley. I'm the regional representative for Western Manufactured Housing Communities Association, and we represent mobile home park owners throughout the state of California. And it's probably not a surprise to learn that we're always against rent control. It's a horrible housing policy that destroys harmony, erodes affordable housing, and it should be soundly rejected and alternatives identified. I have to commend your staff report on a very thorough report. This study has overwhelmingly showed that Santa Ana has beautiful, affordable mobile home parks that are well maintained and well managed, and rents are stable. Residents are happy with their housing selection, and this never would have been the case under a rent control scheme. There's been a lot of activity surrounding mobile home rent control in Orange County in the last few months, since a noticed increase at a park that was located in both Fullerton and Anaheim, Rachel La Paz. The new owner of this park noticed a $400 increase, and after a great backlash, he rescinded the increase to work out with his residents' HOA to find an acceptable rent increase schedule that will meet his business needs and the residents' needs. The overwhelming message from both the Fullerton and the Anaheim City Councils were that they understood the business's need to correct well below market rents, but just not all at once. Here in Santa Ana, the park owner has opted to correct below market rents slowly, gradually, with an average of a 6% increase, with tenant protections, such as a rental assistance program, and it's suggested by some that this isn't appropriate either. And I would suggest it just can't be both ways. Rent control is not the answer, and you do have an alternative. I would suggest the answer for Santa Ana is long-term leases. Both parks of concern have indicated that they would be willing to offer long-term leases to their residents and started that process. Long-term leases provide a low, predictable increase for residents, while at the same time allows the park owner to keep up with the pace of inflation, market rents, on turnover, and maintain their community. And you might find the best part of this is that it will cost the city of Santa Ana $0. Finally, I'd like to suggest what's happening here is an exploited opportunity by Gizmo. And while it was mentioned at the April meeting that the motives of the residents were sincere, I feel they've been coached and manipulated by using fear by Gizmo. Ever since the Rancho La Paz, their tactics have become downright cruel, and it's reported that one of their organizing activists was telling residents that they were going to be sleeping in their cars and women's raped. This is terrible, and it has to come to an end. At Valley High, the park owner has given every resident and the city every assurance that no one will lose their home for inability to pay, and he has done so in writing. It isn't lost on anyone that if he doesn't uphold his promise, you, the council, you have the ability to pass a citywide ordinance in 2 meetings.
Mr. Clay H.
Thank you.
There needs some order in the house. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Clay Haig. I represent the ownership of the Liberty Mobile Home Park on Harbor Boulevard and did a home park up in Patton. We've been in business for over 30 years. I've been in the mobile home business myself for over 30 years, beginning in 1986. And since then, I've participated in many of these rent control debates in city council meetings and county board of supervisor meetings. And it's the script is pretty much the same on both sides, whether you're a park owner or a resident representative. But I can tell you from personal experience, where we've had mobile home parks that are under rent control and those that don't, the rent control scheme just does not work. In Yucaipa, where there are 39 mobile home parks, the tenants pay for it. The tenants pay for the administration of that ordinance, but they don't pay for the legal costs whenever the ordinance is not applied properly. And when it's not applied properly, that's when we see these things go into court. And many times, the cheers that you hear at the city council meeting when the rent control ordinance is adopted turn to tears and jeers when a court says there's a rent increase that's due this park owner for $100. And so the whole balance is tipped one way or the other because of the rent ordinance. I would caution the city from moving in that direction. There must be other alternatives. If there is assistance to be rendered to residents, there must be a way to find that. Outside of having a mobile home park owner bear that responsibility, one has to remember that in a rent control ordinance, it has certain rules that a city must apply in order for it to be constitutional. And it's those rules that bring the tears to residents later on. It's not a winning combination. Thank you for allowing me to share my concerns and my experiences with you.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Chad Kastenheiser. I'm a manager with Basir and Kastenheiser, and we represent Warren Mobile Home Estates in the city of Santa Ana. And I've been doing this for about 14 years. We manage properties throughout the state in many of the jurisdictions that do have rent control. And as Mr. Haig and Ms. Polly have mentioned, we've not seen them to be a viable option. We understand the people's desire to have low rents. However, what happens with low rents is often that the maintenance of the parks is then sacrificed. Low rents, no turnover rents, increases. It's just not a winning combination to have quality properties. As noted, your staff report was wonderful. It was very thorough, and it pointed out the quality of the communities that you have in Santa Ana. And I think that's something that people are proud of. And I think that if we were to go this way with the rent control ordinance, it's going to be sacrificed, and that the quality of the communities will be jeopardized. I urge you to look at the other options that have been presented. I urge the residents to communicate with ownership and the organizations out there that provide those alternatives. They are good alternatives, and the park owners are willing to work with people and to communicate for the benefit of all involved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I represent the Lake Park communities, which there are 2 in Santa Ana. We have approximately 407 residents. We've been in business for 45 years. I'm saddened to hear some of the things I've heard tonight, but rent control is not the answer. I've worked with parks and rent control and non-rent control, and it always comes down to sacrificing the residents in the rent control communities. The solution are long-term leases. They protect the residents. There's no doubt about it. Our residents, all 405 of them, have long-term leases, and we have very, very little problems with any kind of rent increases. They all know what it is. They have the lease and they understand them. So I would commit to saying that long-term rents, leases is the option to go with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Wilson. I represent the property manager for Continental Mobile Home Park in Santa Ana, among other properties located within the state of California. At Continental, there are 257 spaces, 98% of which are occupied, and 95% of those occupants are on long-term leases. We believe that we offer a high quality of living at an affordable price. We are opposed to rent control and a moratorium on rent increases. We also offer a rental assistance program and work with our residents to the best of our ability to offer solutions to the issues that they have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Property management, and you know, we've got a lot of facts here. The reality is, all but 14 residents are only paying $7.99 a month. Some people are getting bigger increases because we're trying to even it out to make it so that most people pay close to about the same rent to make it fair and equitable. And I could give you more, but You know, what occurs to me is, we're talking about real people here, and I understand that. It's obvious from the people that came up here that a lot of people are truly fearful. Some people are, being dramatic and mean, but most people weren't mean-spirited that came up here, and I think because they're people. And we heard about people with cancer, and I wish, actually I don't wish it was a year ago I didn't have any hair, I was 35 pounds thinner, and I almost died from cancer myself. I'm 69 years old, and nobody should feel sorry for me because I'm real fortunate. I own JNHS in property management, and I'm doing really well, and my family doesn't have to worry about it. I'm not worried about paying my mortgage or my rent or anything else, so I understand that there are people that are worried. But the one thing that strikes me tonight is talk about rent control and the dialogue that's going back and forth is once you have people stop talking to each other, it really doesn't work. And I think encouraging us and the residents to get together and talk about long-term leases can work. If that doesn't work, then let's be back here maybe next year and talk about maybe you guys need to take this out of our hands because we're incapable. But I think you're getting a display tonight of what happens to a community when you have rent control. We don't talk to each other. We're not people anymore. I'm 7th generation Californian on the Dominguez side, and I just tell you that that's not the California way. It's obviously not the Santa Ana way. Let's sit down and talk about long-term leases. Let's dispel their true fears because they are people. And no matter how they treat me, I'm going to remember that, any meanness that they displayed tonight is really out of fear. So let's sit down and talk to them because I'm a person too. And they can talk to me. And honestly, it hurts my heart. I've got this company, G&H, for 35 years, and I don't like it disparaged.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sal Ortiz. Go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening. My name is Sal Ortiz. I'm a regional supervisor for a property management company that manages 2 mobile home parks with a total of 151 spaces in Santa Ana. Helping serve the mobile home owners and mobile home park owners, I strongly oppose rent control. I feel rent control forces park owners to subsidize the tenants' housing costs regardless of income, which often leads to a reduction in park amenities and in some cases, lawsuits when rents do not cover a park operations costs. Unlike a traditional rental property, mobile home parks operate like small cities. Rents often cover property taxes and fund essential neighborhood services such as park management, utilities, roads, landscaping, security, recreation, and more. When rent control ordinances reduce rents at below market rates, services are reduced like a city facing budget deficits. Rent control regulations have been proven to cost local governments millions of dollars to administer and to legally defend, all at the expense of other government services and programs. It can also be passed through to the residents who the regulations are supposed to be benefiting. Millionaires are eligible for rent control housing in California. Rent control mobile homes are not means tested. This is why some mobile homes are selling for over $4 million in the rent control city of Malibu. As a consequence, park owners are required to subsidize the housing costs of tenants regardless of their need. This really underscores how misdirected some public policy can be when trying to find real solutions to the housing crisis. When manufactured homes offer all the quality and comfort of a stick-built house at prices 30% less, a compelling case can be made that they are part of the solution and not the problem. There are many property owners that offer and support long-term lease agreements and direct rental system programs, which provide bona fide rental protection and help to those mobile home park residents in need. California has created a regulatory environment where existing parks are threatened by rent control ordinances that undermine a park's economic sustainability and cost-prohibitive building regulations and fees that have stifled the construction of new parks and or programs to help residents. As a consequence, it's been decades since a new mobile home park has been built. Despite the very good intentions behind rent control laws, it is time for the government regulators to abandon the current course of driving up the cost of housing. Streamlining the permitting, zoning, and environmental processes for new residential construction may prove to be the best strategy for addressing unaffordable housing. Strong demand and low supply drives up prices. Intervening in the market to manipulate prices rarely yields the most effective results. And in the case of rent control, the data certainly supports this view.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Expand the apartment and mobile home stock, not.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Seibel. I'm Director of Property Management for JR Enterprises. JR Enterprises owns and operates the Sands Mobile Estates. In fact, they built the park 50 years ago. We have great relationship with our residents, and what other speakers have mentioned about long-term leases, I believe that is a really great idea. 85% of our residents are on long-term leases. They understand them. They're well aware of what the rent increases are going to be. They can plan. We can plan for maintenance projects and such. We also have our own form of rental assistance through the Manufactured Housing Educational Trust membership. So we voluntarily provide assistance to our residents who apply and who qualify. So it's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki Talley.
For allowing us to be heard, and I know you're listening very carefully to everyone, as are we. And I again want to remind you, Vicki Talley, Executive Director of the Manufactured Housing Educational Trust. Representing the mobile home community owners, we take that responsibility very seriously. As you have heard, we provide a rental assistance program, and I want to just clarify a couple things that were said this evening. Although our material says we will subsidize up to 10% in a community, we've never hit 10%. But if it came to the point where we did, we would absolutely consider and go beyond servicing and providing a subsidy to above 10%. The same goes for the amount of the subsidy. We really do provide a subsidy based on need. So I want to thank you for remembering those considerations. You've heard quite a bit tonight. People saying they're going to be homeless, and I want to remind you that the people living in the mobile home communities in the city of Santa Ana all own their homes. They have an invested interest in their home, and we want to keep them as residents of those parks, and we're going to do that. I also, just to clarify one additional thing, I think that there's been some misleading information in terms of whether or not the rent can be withdrawn or whatever. But those rent increase notices in Valley High were legally noticed and will go into effect June 1st. Thank you very much again for your time and patience.
So during the April 16, 2019 council meeting, staff was directed to assess the existing conditions and explore options in response to public comments from mobile home residents concerning the increase in rent space. The staff has done a tremendous job, and I know it was probably a lot of reading for you, but they put together a very comprehensive report, and it was a multi-department effort. It was led by City Manager's Office, City Attorney's Office, Planning Department, Public Works Department, and even our IT department was involved in it. So it presents to you a very good look at the state of the mobile home parks within our city. They actually did drive-bys through them. They did surveys. They looked at what other cities did. They present you a wide range of options, and it's a receive and file, so there is not any action required of you tonight. However, should you choose to, you can provide staff additional direction if there's anything that you want us to follow up on and bring back to you.
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Is there any comments from the council members? Councilmember Sarmiento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and I want to thank you for accelerating this and putting this at the front of the agenda. We have folks who are here, who are elderly, want to get home, and I know last time you were before us, it was a very long agenda item, and it was at the very tail end of the meeting. So thank you for doing that and showing consideration for this. And I do want to thank our staff as well, because I know it's a robust report. It's a lot of information that needs to be gathered, but it's important. I think that, and I want to thank the mobile home park owners for being here as well, because it's important to have both sides of the of the issue, right? And it's very difficult to make a decision when we're only listening to one side. And that was the purpose of having staff sit down with both representatives of this issue, just so we could get a better assessment of what is happening. So I think we know a little bit better today rather than the first time this matter came before us. And so I know from the discussion from the last time, obviously, you know, my hope was to have a temporary moratorium just so we could discuss how we can address whether it's an issue specific to one park, whether it's, you know, industry-wide, whether it's, you know, all the parks in Santa Ana. And that obviously wasn't supported by the majority of the council, and I respect my colleagues and I respect the majority will. But at the same time, I think nobody advocated for rent control at that point. And I don't think there was ever any request for that from the staff or from my colleagues. I think that, you know, for me, the best argument against, or the best way to sort of not go down the path of rent control is to be reasonable. And I think that's what I've heard tonight from residents that are coming to us genuinely. I don't think these folks are coached. I mean, I heard 3 different languages spoken up here, so it'd be very difficult to coach the same group of folks in multiple languages. I think we're listening to sincere folks that were fearful, they had cause to be concerned, but maybe you as mobile home park owners and as representatives of the industry can kind of put yourselves in their shoes, and they can put themselves in your shoes, where the private sector, you know, we aren't here to dictate what market forces do or where you should go, but at the same time, we want to instill a sense of fairness, and I think you as an industry want to do that as well. You want folks who reside in your parks to be happy, to have good things to say about the condition of your parks, the condition of your environment, and I think this makes sense that we all sit down and try to figure this out. I know other cities have tried to take draconian steps, and I have seen that those have backfired. So I wanted us to be thoughtful, because it really pains me to see people that are elderly, that are scared of, you know, what I see as some increases that are on the unreasonable side. So to the extent that we could maybe smooth out this curve, and I saw this, and you know, what alarmed me is that in my 12 years on the council, I've never had this issue before. You've all been very, very responsible, good mobile home park owners. These folks they've never come before us. I haven't seen them here in the 12 years that I've been here. What does that say? That says that you guys have been managing your parks responsibly. That says good things about you, right? So, you know, my goal tonight, I think, was met, or in the process of being met, by staff trying to serve as an arbiter, trying to serve to mediate this position, because I think that what we don't want is for this to become a problem at one park, then it kind of goes off to another park, and then we just start seeing all the parks in the city going the same way, because there are pressures on them. I understand. You make improvements at your parks, the ownership changes, property management teams change, and these increases start ballooning, and we're going to have this seen every meeting, right? We're going to be here together every Tuesday, every other Tuesday of the month, and that's not what we want. That's not a good way for us to conduct city business. That's not a good way for you to spend your time. So I, you know, hope that we could come to some, you know, understanding where maybe those increases that you all are entitled to have as owners, maybe there's a way to gradually increment them. Working with staff, working with representatives of the Mobile Home Park Residents Association, or residents, and figuring out a way how those things can be arrived at. I heard tonight from some folks who talked about gradual increases, smoothing out that spike in increases. I heard a rental assistance fund for folks who are eligible. I heard, you know, maybe going down the path of long-term leases, if that's possible and reasonable and feasible for folks. There's a number of things that can be done. But my hope was that we could do those before the increase was introduced, right? And I know it's right around the corner on the 1st. That's not where this council wanted to go. I understand. I have to respect my colleagues' will. We don't, I mean, this isn't a dictatorship. I can't do this thing alone. But I do compel my colleagues to see how we can continue working with you all to try to figure this out, because the last thing we want is to be unfair to folks who lived here all their lives, who want to continue living in retirement and just not having this burden on their minds and in their hearts. So, you know, to the extent, Madam City Manager, you're able to continue to work, and I heard genuine commitment by the industry and by the mobile home park owners to sit down and maybe find ways to solve this problem. And that's my own guess at this. And I think that's one of the options made available, because, you know, as we see, somebody mentioned there was only a 4 to 4.5% increase on 14 units, specifically in Valley High. But that was only for, you know, that was at the high end of the spectrum. It went from 912 to 964. And then we had, you know, some increases for 105 units from 7 to 12%. And then for a number, 34 additional units had 15 to 34% increases. I know we can do better. I know we can still get you where you need to be as park owners. But let's see how we can try to figure it out. Let's see how we can try to maybe gradually make those numbers not hurt and make such a profound impact on folks' lives. That would be my only reasonable request. Not talking about rent control, but being genuine in the way we try to figure this problem out, because it's a problem that we have here, but it's a problem that you have as well. All mobile home park or any property owners that use their properties for lease or for rent have this issue. So we have to talk to one another, as somebody said. So that would be my only request and direction to the city staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sarmiento. Councilmember Peñalosa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to thank the residents for coming out and speaking tonight, and the industry and council members for bringing this item before us, because it's an important conversation I have, and just to maintain that relationship and dialogue amongst the residents and the mobile parks that they live in. And it's important that again, we work together in this effort to be responsible about any rent increases that might take place in the future, and just want to thank you guys for coming.
Councilmember Iglesias.
I just want to thank all of you guys for taking your time in coming and expressing your concerns. And also, I just want to thank the mobile home park representatives too for sharing their perspective on the issue and how we're going to address it. One of the things that I know that they mentioned was the rental assistance. What I want to know is how many of the residents are receiving that rental assistance, and who is eligible. Is there a criteria that goes along with helping them out? Because, you know, when rent increases come, it does hurt somebody's budget. So I'm wondering if the foundation has criteria of how to assess who's eligible for that rental assistance supplement. Then also, one thing I would like to see is, what does a long-term lease look like? That would be something that personally I would like to see, just so I can get myself, educated and also up to date with how that works. Because if it's working for one of the mobile home parks, I'm sure it could, that could be a model of how it's going to work for the others. So if you could provide me with something like that so I can look at it, definitely give me an opportunity to understand how the process works. And yes, we should continue to have these conversations between the owners and also the property owners and also the homeowners, because it's time for us, for us to have those discussions, because it does affect the quality of life of our residents. And I know if we have those conversations, I know there's some things that can be mitigated without them coming to us here at the council. Is something that, between them, they can resolve. So if you could help me understand more of what the long-term lease looks like, that would be
certainly, Councilmember Iglesias. In the report, it does mention how many individuals within the mobile home parks are receiving assistance and what kind of assistance.
but we can compile that for you and also give you some sample lease agreements in the future. I'm wondering if there's like a cap, is there a limit, how many can receive it, so that's the kind of information I would like to know. If you would like, Judson Brown, our housing manager, could probably answer a few of those questions right now, or if you would like us to supply those in the future to you, it's your decision.
Do it now. Feature all of them.
I think it'll be, yeah, if you could, I think give us a more in-depth, presentation, I think the future will be good.
Yes. Thank you, all the, folks that came out to speak tonight. I want to thank Councilmember Sarmiento for bringing this item up. Very important to have conversation about it. Tonight's item is a receive and file and update report, and that's what we're going to vote on. And I also want to thank the rest of the council members who are up here for their comments, and I agree with them. And I also would like to see a copy of Councilmember Iglesias is asking for the entire council to have. And if I can receive if I can have a motion to approve so we can move on with the meeting. To receive and file. Is there a second? Second by Peñalosa. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Consent calendar. Is there any items that the council members would like to vote on? Let the clerk know at this time.
It's 19C, 22A, 23A, 23B, 25A, and 25C.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if we could say 19B as an edit.
No items from him, no items from me. If I can get a motion to move the balance. A motion to move the balance. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. So the first item, Madam Clerk. 19C. Speak up.
My question is just, we just to understand the process of what it means to approve destruction of obsolete community development solutions. And this is coming from the Community Development Agency.